The penthouse overlooking Marina Bay wasn't just expensive, it was obscene. $40 million of glass, marble, and imported Italian furniture. Marcus Chen, at 42, had built his tech empire, Chunkor Systems, from nothing. From a cramped apartment in Queens to this Singapore palace in just 15 years. He was a self-made billionaire, and the financial magazines loved him for it. His wife, Dr. Lily Chen, was his perfect counterpart. A renowned cardiothoracic surgeon at Singapore General Hospital, she had saved hundreds of lives with her precise, steady hands. She was brilliant, beautiful, and devoted. Their marriage was the kind that made other couples jealous, the power couple who seemed to have it all, except for one thing, one silent, painful thing that had haunted them for 8 long years. They couldn't have a child. 8 years of negative pregnancy tests. 8 years of perfectly timed attempts. 8 years of watching Lily's hope dim a little more with each passing month. The fertility treatments had been brutal hormone injections that made her sick, IVF cycles that failed again and again, and the mounting pressure that slowly transformed their passionate marriage into a clinical, scheduled routine. But then, on their 9th attempt, a miracle happened. Lily was pregnant. Marcus remembered the moment she told him. It was a Saturday morning, and she'd walked into his home office holding a small wrapped box. Inside was a tiny pair of baby shoes, white with blue laces. "We did it," she'd whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, we're going to be parents." He'd held her then, feeling her body shake with sobs of relief and joy. He'd felt it too, that overwhelming wave of gratitude and love. But there was something else there, something he didn't want to acknowledge. A small dark seed of resentment that had been growing for months. The truth was, Marcus Chen had already found his escape. Her name was Vanessa Lin, 28 years old, razor-sharp and hungry for power. She'd joined Chunkor Systems 8 months ago as a senior business analyst. And from the first moment Marcus saw her in that board meeting, he knew she was dangerous. Not in a threatening way, an intoxicating way. Vanessa didn't look at Marcus like he was a husband or a boss. She looked at him like he was a conquest, a trophy to be won. And God help him, after 8 years of scheduled sex and medical terminology. That look made him feel alive again. The affair started 3 weeks after she joined the company. It began innocuously: late nights, working on the Singapore expansion project. Shared dinners that turned into shared drinks. Intellectual conversations that slowly became intimate confessions. Vanessa made him feel young again, reckless again. She wasn't asking him about basal body temperatures or ovulation windows. She was asking him about his dreams, his ambitions, his desires. One night, after a particularly successful presentation to the board, they'd ended up at her apartment, a sleek, modern space in the Orchard Road district. She'd poured them both wine, and when she'd leaned in to kiss him, Marcus hadn't pulled away. He'd told himself it was just once. Just one night to feel something other than the crushing pressure of fertility. Treatments and disappointed hopes. But once became twice. Twice became a pattern. And a pattern became a full-blown affair. For 3 months, Marcus lived a double life. During the day, he was the devoted husband, attending doctor's appointments with Lily, holding her hand through another round of injections, telling her it would work this time. At night, after claiming he had late meetings or investor calls, he was with Vanessa, losing himself in the dangerous thrill of something forbidden. Vanessa was everything Lily wasn't in those moments. She was carefree, spontaneous. and she never looked at him with that mixture of hope and fear that had become Lily's permanent expression. With Vanessa, there were no stakes, just pleasure and escape. But then Lily got pregnant, and suddenly Marcus's carefully compartmentalized world started to crack. The night Lily told him about the pregnancy, Marcus had been planning to end things with Vanessa. He'd rehearsed the speech in his head a dozen times. This was a mistake. I love my wife. We need to stop. Simple, clean, final. But when he went to Vanessa's apartment that evening to break it off, she opened the door in a red silk robe and told him something that made his blood run cold. I'm pregnant too, Marcus. 8 weeks. The world tilted. Marcus stood in her doorway, his mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. What? How? We were careful, apparently not careful enough, Vanessa said, her voice eerily calm. She walked to her kitchen counter and poured herself a glass of water. I found out yesterday. I was going to tell you tomorrow, but you're here now, so here we are. Marcus felt his chest tighten. 2 pregnancies. His wife and his mistress, both carrying his children. This wasn't just a mess, this was a catastrophe of biblical proportions. You need to get rid of it, he said, the words tumbling out before he could think. Vanessa, I can't. My wife just told me she's pregnant. This is everything we've wanted for 8 years. I can't destroy that. Vanessa set down her glass very carefully. When she turned to face him, her expression had changed. The warmth, the playfulness, it was all gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. Get rid of it, she repeated, her voice dangerously soft. Marcus, darling, I'm not some inconvenient problem you can just erase. I'm carrying your child. Your heir, so is Lily. Marcus shot back, panic rising in his throat. She's my wife, Vanessa. It was a mistake. I'm sorry, but it has to end. Vanessa smiled then, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a chess player who'd just seen checkmate 3 moves ahead. End, she said softly. Oh Marcus, we're just getting started. You see, I've been thinking about our future. Chunkor Systems is valued at what now? 4 billion. And you own 62%. That makes you worth about $2.5 billion. Marcus felt ice water in his veins. What are you talking about? I'm talking about my child's future, Vanessa said, walking toward him slowly. I'm talking about securing what's mine. You're going to divorce Lily. You're going to marry me. And you're going to do it before both babies are born. You're insane, Marcus whispered. I'm practical, Vanessa corrected. You have a choice, Marcus. You can do this the easy way, divorce Lily quietly, give her a generous settlement, and we can be a family, or she paused, pulling out her phone. I can do it the hard way. She showed him the screen. It was a folder labeled insurance. Inside were dozens of photos, and Vanessa together at restaurants, entering her apartment building, in her bed. There were screenshots of text messages, credit card receipts, hotel bookings, everything meticulously documented. I've been preparing for our future since the day we met, Vanessa said sweetly. I'm very thorough, Marcus. It's one of the qualities you admired about me, remember? Marcus felt the world collapsing around him. This wasn't a relationship. It had never been a relationship. It was a trap, and he'd walked right into it. If you don't divorce Lily and marry me, Vanessa continued, her voice still that eerily calm tone, I'll send all of this to the Singapore Straits Times. I'll send it to your board of directors. I'll send it to your investors. And then I'll file a paternity suit that will drag your name through every gossip column in Asia." She moved closer, placing a hand on his chest. "Your reputation will be destroyed. Your company will crater. Your wife will divorce you anyway and take half of what's left. But if you do this my way, Marcus, we can control the narrative. A sad marriage that didn't work out. A new love. A fresh start." Marcus stared at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. She wasn't the fun, spontaneous woman he'd thought she was. She was a predator who had been hunting him from the very beginning. "I need time," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "You have 2 weeks," Vanessa replied. "Lily is what, 12 weeks pregnant now? The first trimester is the most dangerous, Marcus. Anything could happen. Stress, for example, is very bad for pregnant women." The implied threat hung in the air between them like poison gas. Marcus left her apartment in a daze. He sat in his car in the parking garage for an hour, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. He wanted to scream. He wanted to drive his car off a bridge. He wanted to rewind time and undo every stupid, selfish decision he'd made. But he couldn't. The trap had already closed. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that someone else had been watching him. Someone who had suspected the affair long before that night. Dr. Lily Chen was not a fool, She had built her career on observation, on noticing the small signs others missed. A slight irregularity in a heartbeat, a shadow on an X-ray that shouldn't be there. And for the past 3 months, she'd been noticing irregularities in her husband, the way he showered immediately when he came home, when he used to just collapse on the couch, the new cologne he'd started wearing, the phone that was now always face down on the nightstand, the credit card statement with charges from restaurants she'd never been to. Lily had wanted to be wrong. God, how she'd wanted to be wrong. So she'd hired a private investigator, discreet woman named Patricia Lim, who specialized in marital infidelity cases. Patricia had given her the report. 2 days after Lily found out she was pregnant, a manila folder filled with photographs that shattered her world. Marcus and Vanessa kissing in a parking garage. Marcus and Vanessa entering her apartment building. Marcus and Vanessa at a romantic restaurant in his hand covering hers across the table. Lily had sat in her car outside the hospital after her shift, staring at those photos, feeling something inside her break apart. 8 years. 8 years of standing by his side through the fertility nightmare. 8 years of injecting herself with hormones that made her feel like a stranger in her own body. 8 years of hope and disappointment and trying again, and he'd thrown it all away for a 28-year-old analyst who looked at him like he was a prize to be won. But Lily Chen was a surgeon. She didn't make emotional decisions in the operating room, and she wouldn't make them in her life. So she made a choice that night, a choice that would change everything. She wouldn't confront Marcus. Not yet. She would wait. She would watch. She would protect the life growing inside her, the miracle she'd waited 8 years for. And when the time was right, when she had gathered every piece of evidence she needed, she would destroy him legally, financially, and publicly. Lily Chen was done being the devoted wife. She was going to be the avenging angel. What neither Marcus nor Lily knew was that fate had already written a different ending to their story. An ending that would make all their plans, all their betrayals, all their schemes completely irrelevant. Because in 6 months, in a hospital delivery room, Lily Chen would die, and her death would set off a chain reaction of karma so perfect, so devastating, that it would look like divine intervention. The next 4 months were a carefully orchestrated performance. Marcus played the role of devoted husband-to-be, attending every prenatal appointment, painting the nursery a soft yellow, assembling the crib that had taken him 6 frustrating hours and 3 YouTube tutorials, but every Tuesday and Thursday evening he had board meetings that ran late. Those were the nights he went to Vanessa's apartment, where the pressure became unbearable. Vanessa's demands escalated with each passing week. She wanted to know when he was filing for divorce. She wanted to meet his lawyer. She wanted assurances, contracts, financial security. She had transformed from his escape into his warden. "I'm not going to be the other woman forever, Marcus," she'd say, her hand resting on her growing belly. "Our child deserves legitimacy. He deserves his father's name." "She's 4 months pregnant, Vanessa," Marcus would reply, the same conversation on an endless loop. "I can't drop divorce papers on my pregnant wife. The stress could kill the baby. So you're going to wait until she gives birth." Vanessa's eyes would flash with anger. "And then what?" "Wait until the baby is 6 months old, a year. When exactly does your obligation to her end and your obligation to me begin?" Marcus had no good answers. He was trapped between 2 women, 2 pregnancies, 2 futures that couldn't coexist. He felt like he was being torn in half, but Lily was playing her own game. She'd continued her investigation through Patricia Lim, and she'd discovered something that Marcus didn't know she knew. Vanessa Lynn wasn't pregnant by accident. Patricia had interviewed Vanessa's former roommate from university, a woman named Rachel, who'd been willing to talk after a few glasses of wine and a cash payment. Rachel had told Patricia a story that made Lily's blood run cold. Vanessa always had a plan, Rachel had said. Even in university, she used to say she'd never work her way up the corporate ladder like a regular person. She'd marry her way to the top. She was obsessed with landing a rich husband. Patricia had dug deeper and found more. Vanessa had deliberately targeted Marcus from the moment she'd interviewed at Chunkor Systems. She'd researched his marriage, his fertility struggles, his vulnerabilities. The pregnancy wasn't an accident, it was a calculated move. Lily had stared at the investigator's report, a cold fury building in her chest. This woman hadn't just slept with her husband. She'd hunted him like prey. Lily made another decision then. She would let Marcus think he was controlling the situation. She would play the oblivious, devoted wife. And when the time came after her baby was born safely, she would drop legal nuclear bombs so devastating that both Marcus and Vanessa would be left with nothing but ashes. She'd already consulted with Alina Rodriguez, Singapore's most ruthless divorce attorney. Alina had looked at the evidence Lily brought for photos, the financial records of Marcus's business dinners, the paper trail of his affair, and smiled like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Mrs. Chen," Alina had said, "with this evidence and Singapore's divorce laws, you're not just looking at half of his assets. Given the affair, the pregnancy outside marriage, and his violation of marital faith, we can argue for 60 to 70%. Plus child support that will make him weep. Plus alimony that will cripple his cash flow for years. I want to destroy him," Lily had said quietly. "I want him to regret every lie, every betrayal, every moment he thought he could throw away 8 years of my life for that predator." Elena's smile had widened. "Then let's build your case and prepare for war." But fate, it turned out, had its own plan. A plan that would render all of their schemes meaningless. In Lily's 20th week of pregnancy, during a routine ultrasound, the technician had paused, frowning at the screen. She'd called in the doctor, who'd studied the images with a concerned expression. Dr. Chen, the obstetrician, had said carefully, "I'm seeing some abnormalities in your blood pressure readings. Have you been feeling unusually tired? Any swelling in your hands or feet?" Lily had nodded, but she'd dismissed it as normal pregnancy symptoms. She was a surgeon who regularly did 12-hour shifts. Of course she was tired, but the doctor had ordered more tests. Blood work, kidney function panels, 24-hour urine collection. The results came back 3 days later, and they were concerning. Protein in her urine, elevated blood pressure, early signs of preeclampsia. "We need to monitor this very closely," her obstetrician had warned. Preeclampsia can escalate quickly. If it progresses to eclampsia, it becomes life-threatening for both you and the baby. Lily had listened to the doctor's warnings with her clinical mind, already calculating risks and outcomes. She was a surgeon. She understood that pregnancy complications were common, manageable with proper monitoring. What she didn't tell the doctor, what she couldn't admit even to herself, was that she'd been under massive psychological stress. The affair, the betrayal, the meticulous planning of her revenge, the constant performance of being the happy, oblivious wife. Stress, the silent killer. Stress, the trigger for preeclampsia. Marcus had been with her for that appointment, playing his role perfectly. He'd asked all the right questions, held her hand at the right moments, promised to reduce her stress levels. But that very evening, he'd gone to Vanessa's apartment and told her about the complication. "Lily has preeclampsia," he'd said, pacing Vanessa's living room. "The doctor said it could become serious. We need to stop this pressure. I need time." Vanessa had stood from her couch, her own pregnant belly prominent at 20 weeks, and slapped him across the face. The sound cracked through the apartment like a gunshot. "Stop the pressure," she'd hissed, her eyes blazing. "I'm 6 months pregnant with your child, Marcus. I don't care about Lily's medical drama. You have 2 weeks to file for divorce, or I'm going public with everything. And I mean everything." She'd pulled out her phone and showed him something new recordings. Audio recordings of their conversations, including ones where Marcus had explicitly discussed hiding assets from Lily, strategizing how to minimize what she'd get in a divorce. These recordings, Vanessa had said coldly, prove premeditation. They prove you've been planning to defraud your wife. If I release these, you won't just lose half your assets in a divorce, Marcus. You'll face criminal charges for financial fraud. You could go to prison. Marcus had stared at her, his cheek still stinging from the slap, and finally understood the full scope of his nightmare. Vanessa hadn't just trapped him. She'd built a prison around him, brick by brick, recording by recording. And now she held all the keys. He'd left her apartment that night, feeling like a dead man walking. Every choice led to destruction. If he divorced Lily now, the stress could kill her and the baby. If he didn't, Vanessa would destroy him publicly and legally. There was no good move left on the board. What Marcus didn't know was that Vanessa had already made a decision of her own. A decision so cold, so calculated, that it would have chilled him to his core if he'd known Vanessa had decided that Lily Chen needed to disappear. Not through violence. Vanessa was too smart for that. But through attrition, through stress, through carefully escalated pressure that would worsen Lily's preeclampsia until nature took its course. Vanessa began a subtle campaign of psychological warfare. Anonymous letters sent to Lily's workplace about Marcus's affair. Accidental phone calls to the Chen house, where Vanessa would breathe heavily and hang up. Messages left with Marcus's assistant about the Singapore property transfer, a completely fictional transaction designed to make Lily think Marcus was hiding. Assets. Each carefully placed bomb was designed to spike Lily's stress levels, and it worked. Lily's blood pressure climbed. At 24 weeks, she was put on modified bed rest. At 28 weeks, her obstetrician discussed the possibility of early delivery if the preeclampsia worsened. But Lily Chen was a fighter. She took her medications religiously. She monitored her blood pressure 4 times a day. She reduced her surgical schedule and spent more time resting. She was determined to carry this baby to term, to bring this miracle safely into the world. And then, at 34 weeks pregnant, everything exploded. Lily came home early from the hospital one afternoon, exhausted from a difficult surgery. She walked into the master bedroom to lie down, and that's when she saw it. Marcus's laptop left open on the bed. An email program still active. She knew she shouldn't look. But something, intuition, fate, divine intervention, made her glance at the screen. The email was from Vanessa, sent just an hour ago. Marcus, the stress campaign is working. Patricia's contact at Singapore General says Lily's preeclampsia is worsening. Her OB is discussing preterm delivery. If she goes into early labor, the risks skyrocket. Babies born at 34 weeks have complications. Mother and baby could both. Well, you know. Then you'd be free. We'd be free. Just be patient, darling. Nature will take its course. Lily read the email 3 times, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold the laptop. They were trying to kill her, not with a weapon, not with poison, but with stress, with psychological torture designed to worsen her medical condition until it became fatal. The shock was so complete, so overwhelming, that Lily's vision blurred. She felt a sharp pain in her head, a pressure building behind her eyes. Her hands flew to her temple as the worst headache of her life exploded through her skull. She tried to call out for Marcus, but he was still at the office. Her phone was in her purse. On the kitchen counter, she took 2 steps toward the bedroom door and collapsed. The seizure lasted 47 seconds. When it ended, Lily Chen lay on the bedroom floor, blood trickling from where she'd bitten her tongue, her pregnant belly rising and falling with shallow breaths. She'd progressed from preeclampsia to full eclampsia, the life-threatening complication that killed mothers and babies. Her brain was swelling, her organs were shutting down, and she was completely alone. Marcus found her 20 minutes later. He'd come home early to pick up some documents, and the sight of his wife seizing on the bedroom floor would haunt him for the rest of his life. Lily, he'd dropped to his knees, rolling her onto her side, his hands shaking as he dialed 995. My wife is pregnant, and she's having a seizure. She's 34 weeks. She has preeclampsia, please. We need an ambulance now. The paramedics arrived in 8 minutes. They stabilized Lily enough to transport her, loaded her onto a gurney, and rushed her to Singapore General Hospital, ironically, the same hospital where she worked. Marcus rode in the ambulance, holding Lily's cold hand, watching the paramedic inject her with magnesium sulfate to stop the seizures. His mind was a chaos of terror and guilt. The email he'd left open on his laptop. Had she seen it? Is that what triggered the seizure? At the hospital, the emergency team swarmed Lily. Her obstetrician, Dr. Sarah Tan, took one look at the monitors and made an immediate decision. We're taking her to the OR. Emergency C-section. The baby needs to come out now, or we'll lose them both. Marcus was ushered to the surgical waiting area on the 4th floor. The same sterile, fluorescent-lit hallway where 100 other terrified family members had paced before him. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and did something he would regret for the rest of his life. He called. "Vanessa, she's in emergency surgery," he said, his voice cracking. "Eclamptic seizure. They're doing a C-section right now." There was a pause on the other end. Then Vanessa said, very quietly, "So it's happening. Marcus, this is terrible, but this might be the way out. If something happens to Lily, you'll be free. We can be together. We can be a family." Marcus felt bile rise in his throat. "Are you insane? She might die, Vanessa. My wife might die. Your pregnant mistress is standing right here." Vanessa shot back, her voice cold. "Your real family is right here." "Where are you, Marcus?" "At the hospital." "Stay there." "I'm coming." "Don't you dare," Marcus started. But she'd already hung up. 15 minutes later, Vanessa walked off the elevator onto the 4th floor. She was 7 months pregnant now, her belly prominent under an expensive black dress. She walked straight up to Marcus, who was standing outside the OR doors, his face ashen. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus hissed, looking round frantically. "Lily's colleagues work here. If anyone sees, I'm here for you," Vanessa said, loud enough for the nurses at the nearby station to hear. "Because you need support right now." One of the nurses, a woman named Grace, who'd worked with Lily for 6 years, looked up sharply. She recognized Marcus from the hospital charity events, and she definitely noticed the very pregnant woman standing possessively close to him. Grace's eyes narrowed. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to the surgical team's group chat. "Dr. Chen's husband is in the waiting room with another pregnant woman. Heads up, inside the operating room." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Dr. Sarah Tan had opened Lily's abdomen and immediately saw the problem. Lily's placenta had partially abrupted, separated from the uterine wall. The baby was in severe distress, its heart rate dropping dangerously low. "Get that baby out now," Dr. Tan commanded, "and somebody page hematology. She's bleeding too much. I think she's got DIC disseminated intravascular coagulation, a catastrophic condition where the blood simultaneously clots and hemorrhages, a condition with a mortality rate over 40%. The surgical team worked with desperate precision. They delivered the baby a boy. Tiny but breathing hand handed him immediately to the NICU team waiting in the corner. But Lily was bleeding. Despite the surgeon's best efforts, blood was pouring from her uterus, her surgical site, even from her foresights. The DIC had triggered a cascade of organ failure. Blood pressures dropping, the anesthesiologist called out. 80/40. She's crashing. Dr. Tan worked frantically, trying to stop the bleeding. They gave Lily unit after unit of blood, pushing medications to help her blood clot, doing everything in the emergency protocol. But sometimes, despite everything medicine can do, the body just gives up. Lily Chun's heart stopped at 7:47 p.m. The code team rushed in, CPR, defibrillation, epinephrine. They worked for 37 minutes, trying everything to bring her back. But at 8:24 p.m., Dr. Sarah Tan looked at the clock and called it time of death, 2024. I'm so sorry, everyone. We did everything we could. The all fell silent, except for the soft crying of one of the younger nurses. Dr. Tan pulled off her bloody gloves and pushed through the double doors to the waiting area. Marcus saw her coming. The expression on Dr. Tan's face told him everything before she said a single word. Mr. Chen, Dr. Tan said, her voice heavy with grief and professional exhaustion. I'm so very sorry. We did everything, transfusions, resuscitation, everything, but the dick was too severe. Lily didn't make it. Marcus's world stopped. Sound disappeared. The fluorescent lights seemed to brighten until they were blinding. He heard a sound coming from somewhere far away, broken. Animal wail of grief. It took him a moment to realize the sound was coming from him. He collapsed into a waiting room chair, his body folding in on itself, his hands covering his face as sobs tore through him. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. Lily was supposed to survive. They were supposed to divorce, yes, but she was supposed to live. She was supposed to raise their child. She was supposed to have a future, even if it wasn't with him. And then, from behind him, came a sound that made Dr. Tan's blood run cold. A laugh. It was quiet, sharp, and utterly unmistakable. A single bark of triumphant laughter. Dr. Tan's eyes snapped to the source. Vanessa was standing there, one hand covering her mouth. But her eyes were dancing with barely concealed victory. She'd won. The obstacle was gone. The wife was dead. Marcus was hers now, of him, his fortune, his name, his future. She would be the only mother of his children, the only Mrs. Chen. Marcus's head came up slowly. He stared at Vanessa in absolute horror. Did you just... He choked out. Did you just laugh? Vanessa's expression shifted, trying for sympathy, but the damage was done. Several nurses had heard it too. Grace, the nurse who'd texted earlier, was staring at Vanessa with open disgust. Dr. Tan walked past Marcus, her face like carved stone, and stopped directly in front of Vanessa. She was a small woman, barely 5'3", but in that moment she seemed 10 feet tall. Who are you? Dr. Tan asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I'm Marcus's friend, Vanessa stammered, suddenly realizing she might have made a catastrophic mistake. His friend, Dr. Tan repeated, her eyes dropping to Vanessa's pregnant belly. His pregnant friend who just laughed when I announced his wife's death. Vanessa's face went pale. I didn't. It was just time in shock. I didn't mean Mr. Chen, Dr. Tan said, turning back to Marcus. Her voice was still cold, but there was something else there now. Something that cut through Marcus's grief and made him look up. There's something else you need to know. Marcus stared at her, his eyes red and swollen. What? Dr. Tan took a breath. She'd been debating whether to add this information now or wait, but the presence of this callous, laughing mistress made her decision easy. We delivered your son, Dr. Tan said. He's small, just 4 pounds, 2 ounces, but he's breathing on his own. The NICU team is with him now. A flicker of something hope. Terror crossed Marcus's face. My son, will he be okay? The neonatologist will brief you shortly, Dr. Tan said. Then she paused, and her next words dropped like a bomb. But there's something unusual that we discovered during the delivery. What? Marcus whispered. Dr. Tan looked him directly in the eyes. Mr. Chen, your wife was carrying twins. One baby was positioned directly behind the other in every ultrasound we did. It's rare, but it happens. We didn't know until we opened her up. The words hung in the air for 3 seconds of absolute silence. Then Dr. Tan delivered the kill shot. You have a son, and you have a daughter. It's twins. The sound that came from Vanessa was unlike anything human. It started as a gasp, then morphed into a choked, strangled noise as all the blood drained from her face. Twins, not one inconvenient, crying baby that she'd have to tolerate. Not one heir that could be managed, molded, eventually sidelined, 2.2 permanent. Unbreakable, living links to the perfect dead wife. 2 heirs to the Chen fortune, to constant daily reminders that she would always be second place, that her child would always be the other baby, the one from the affair, the one born of betrayal. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth, not in sympathy now, but in horror. Her carefully constructed victory had just transformed into her worst nightmare. She'd orchestrated a death. She'd pushed and manipulated and stressed a pregnant woman until her body gave out. She'd laughed at that woman's death, and her reward was to spend the rest of her life raising her child in the shadow of 2 others, 2 babies who would inherit everything, 2 babies who would be the legitimate heirs, while hers would be forever tainted by scandal. Marcus wasn't even looking at her anymore. His grief had been temporarily suspended by shock. Twins, he repeated numbly. We were having twins. Dr. Tan nodded. A boy and a girl. They're in the NICU now. They're fighters, Mr. Chen, just like their mother was. The emphasis on their mother was deliberate. Dr. Tan looked past Marcus at Vanessa. Her eyes filled with cold contempt. Mr. Chen will need to come to the NICU, Dr. Tan continued. The twins need their father. They need someone to advocate for them, to love them, to be there as they fight to grow strong. She turned to walk away, then paused and looked back at Vanessa. As for you, Dr. Tan said quietly, I suggest you leave this hospital, now, before I call security and have you removed for disrupting a medical facility. Grace, she nodded to the nurse. Please escort this woman to the elevator. Vanessa found her voice, panicked rising. You can't throw me out. I have every right to be here. Marcus, tell them I have a right to be here. Marcus slowly turned to look at her. His face was no longer grief-stricken. It was empty, dead. He looked at her like she was a stranger. No, like she was something worse than a stranger. Like she was a monster he'd somehow never seen clearly until this moment. Get out, he said, his voice flat and cold. Get out of this hospital. Get out of my life. Marcus, I'm pregnant with your child. I don't care. The words exploded out of him with such force that several nurses jumped. You laughed. You laughed when they told me my wife died. You laughed when the mother of my children, my twins, died, trying to bring them into this world safely. He stood up, taking a step toward her, and Vanessa actually backed away. I know about the emails, Marcus said, his voice shaking with rage. I know you were trying to stress her to death. And it worked, Vanessa. You killed her. Maybe not with your hands, but you killed her as surely as if you'd pushed her off a building. I didn't. That's not you. Can't prove. Vanessa was backing toward the elevator now, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. Get out, Marcus repeated. I will provide for the child because it's innocent in all this, but I never want to see your face again. If you come near me, if you come near my children, I will get a restraining order. Do you understand me? Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. She looked around desperately, but every face in that hallway was looking at her with disgust or contempt. The nurses, the orderlies, even the janitor had stopped his work to stare at the woman who'd laughed at a death announcement. Grace, the nurse, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Right now. Or I'm calling security." Vanessa looked at Marcus one last time, searching for any crack in his resolve, any opening she could exploit. She found none. The man looking back at her was someone she didn't recognize, someone who'd finally woken up from a nightmare. She stumbled to the elevator, stabbing the button with a shaking finger. When the doors finally opened, she practically fell inside as the elevator doors closed. Vanessa saw her reflection in the polished metal. She looked destroyed, her makeup smeared, her face blotchy, her expensive dress wrinkled from the stress. But worse than her appearance was the creeping realization of what she'd just done. She'd spent 8 months carefully constructing a trap. She'd documented everything, recorded everything, positioned herself as the victim and Lily as the obstacle. And then, in one moment of triumphant carelessness, she'd laughed at a woman's death in front of a dozen witnesses. The elevator reached the ground floor. Vanessa walked out into the humid Singapore night, her mind racing. She needed to do damage control. She needed to spin this somehow. She pulled out her phone and called her lawyer, man named William Tan, who specialized in family law. "William, it's Vanessa Lynn. I need help. Something happened at the hospital." "What kind of something?" William asked warily. Vanessa took a breath. "Marcus Chen's wife died tonight, in childbirth, and I might have reacted inappropriately. There were witnesses." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. "How inappropriately?" William finally asked. I laughed. "It was just shock, just a stress response, but you laughed." William's voice rose. "At a death announcement, in a hospital, in front of medical staff. It was just a second. Vanessa, do you have any idea how this looks?" William sounded panicked now. "You're the pregnant mistress. The wife dies under suspicious circumstances, stress-related complications, and ULAUGH. Do you understand that the hospital could report this? That Marcus could claim you deliberately caused emotional distress? That if they investigate and find those emails you told me about, the emails, the stress campaign, the deliberate psychological torture," Vanessa felt ice water flood her veins. "If investigators looked into Lily's death, if they discovered the pattern of harassment, the anonymous letters, the phone calls, the emails between her and Marcus discussing how to escalate Lily's stress, ... it wouldn't be a civil matter anymore. It would be criminal. In Singapore, causing death through rash or negligent acts could carry prison time. William, what do I do?" Vanessa's voice was shaking. "What do I do?" "You delete everything," William said urgently. "Every email, every text, every recording. You delete it all right now. And you stay away from Marcus Chen. You stay away from that hospital. You make yourself invisible until I can figure out if we're looking at a criminal investigation. But the baby I'm pregnant with is baby. That baby is the only thing keeping you from a complete catastrophe," William snapped. "It's the only leverage you have left. But Vanessa, if they can prove you contributed to Lily Chun's death, being pregnant won't save you from prison. Do you understand? Delete everything. Now." The line went dead. Vanessa stood on the sidewalk outside Singapore General Hospital. her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped her phone. She'd won. And in winning, she'd destroyed herself. The next 72 hours were a blur for Marcus Chen. He barely left the NICU, standing watch over 2 tiny incubators containing his son and daughter, Oliver. His son weighed 4 pounds, 2 ounces. Olivia, his daughter, was even smaller at 3 pounds, 14 ounces. They were both on breathing support, their tiny chests rising and falling with the help of machines. But they were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. Marcus would stand there for hours, his hands pressed against the clear plastic, watching them. The nurses would bring him coffee, encourage him to eat, tell him he needed rest. He ignored them all. He couldn't leave them. They were all he had left of Lily. On the second day, a hospital social worker named Janet Lee came to speak with him. She was a kind woman in her 50s who'd seen her share of NICU tragedies. "Mr. Chen," she said gently, sitting beside him in the NICU family room, "I need to discuss some practical matters with you. I know this is difficult, but there are decisions that need to be made." Marcus nodded numbly. "Your twins are doing remarkably well considering their circumstances," Janet continued. "But they'll need to stay in the NICU for at least 6 to 8 weeks until they're strong enough to go home. That means you need to prepare. Do you have family who can help? Parents? Siblings?" Marcus shook his head. His parents had died in a car accident 5 years ago. He was an only child. Lily had been his entire world. "I'll hire help," he said hoarsely. "Nannies. Whatever they need." Janet nodded slowly. "Mr. Chen, there's something else. The hospital administration has asked me to speak with you about an incident that occurred the night of your wife's death." Marcus looked up sharply. "What kind of incident?" "There was a woman with you in the surgical waiting area. A pregnant woman. Several staff members reported that she laughed when Dr. Tan announced your wife's death. They also reported that you and this woman appeared to be involved." Marcus felt his chest tighten. Vanessa Lin, she was. He couldn't even say it out loud. "Mr. Chen," Janet said carefully, "the hospital has a duty to report suspicious circumstances surrounding patient deaths. Dr. Tan has reviewed your wife's medical records, and she's concerned about the rapid deterioration of Dr. Chen's preeclampsia, combined with the presence of a pregnant mistress who displayed inappropriate emotions at the death. ANNOUNCEMENT. She let the implications hang in the air, you think. Vanessa had something to do with Lily's death," Marcus said flatly. "I think the hospital wants to make sure they've covered all their bases," Janet replied. "They've filed a report with the police. Not an accusation, just a precautionary documentation. If there was any kind of harassment or stress campaign that contributed to your wife's medical crisis." Marcus closed his eyes. The emails, the stress campaign. He'd been too cowardly to stop it, and now Lily was dead. "I want to cooperate," he said quietly. "I'll tell them everything." That evening, 2 police detectives came to the hospital. Detective Sarah Lim and Detective James Wang from the Criminal Investigation Department. They interviewed Marcus in a private consultation room. He told them everything: the affair, the pregnancy, Vanessa's blackmail, the threats, the emails discussing ways to increase Lily's stress levels. He gave them access to his laptop, his phone, his email accounts, everything. "Mr. Chen," Detective Lim said carefully when he'd finished, "what you're describing could potentially constitute harassment and rash acts causing death. If we can establish a direct link between Ms. Lin's actions and your wife's medical crisis, she could face serious criminal charges. Good, Marcus said coldly. Because she killed my wife. Maybe not with her hands, but she killed her. The detectives exchanged a look. We'll need to interview Ms. Lin, Detective Wang said. Do you know where we can find her? Marcus gave them Vanessa's address, her phone number. Everything he knew. The detectives left, promising to keep him updated. What Marcus didn't know was that Vanessa Lin had already fled Singapore. The moment Vanessa had ended the call with her lawyer, she'd made a decision. Singapore was done. Marcus was done. This entire disaster was done. She'd gone back to her apartment, packed 2 suitcases with essentials, and booked a flight to Bangkok for the next morning. She would disappear into Thailand for a few months, have the baby there, and reassess. Maybe she could still leverage the child for some kind of settlement. Maybe she could reinvent herself somewhere else, but she'd underestimated how fast the Singapore police moved. Detective Lim and Detective Wang showed up at her apartment at 6:47 a.m., just as she was loading her suitcases into a taxi. Miss Vanessa Ling. Detective Lim called out. Vanessa froze, her hand on the taxi door. Slowly, she turned. Yes. I'm Detective Lim. This is Detective Wang. We need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding the death of Dr. Lily Chen. Vanessa's face went white. I have a flight to catch. Can this wait? I'm afraid not, Detective Wang said, his tone leaving no room for argument. This is a preliminary investigation into potential criminal harassment and rash acts causing death. You're not under arrest, but we strongly advise you to cooperate. The taxi driver, sensing drama, quickly pulled away, leaving Vanessa standing there with her suitcases. She had no choice. She followed the detectives to their unmarked car at the police station. They put her in an interview room, small, windowless space with a metal table and uncomfortable chairs. They questioned her. For 6 hours, they asked about her relationship with Marcus, about the pregnancy, about the emails, about the anonymous letters sent to Lily's workplace, about the phone calls, about every single action she'd taken to increase Lily's stress. Vanessa tried to lie at first. She claimed she was just an employee having a consensual relationship with her boss. She denied knowing Lily was pregnant. She denied any harassment campaign. But then Detective Lim placed a folder on the table. Inside were printouts of the emails, the ones Marcus had given them access to. These emails, Detective Lim said quietly, show premeditation. They show deliberate intent to cause emotional and psychological distress to a pregnant woman with a known medical condition. Vanessa stared at the emails, her own words staring back at her. The stress campaign is working. If she goes into early labor, the risks skyrocket. Mother and baby could both. Well, you know. I didn't write that, Vanessa said desperately. Marcus must have. He's trying to frame me. We have the metadata, Ms. Len. Detective Wang interrupted. These emails came from your IP address, from your computer. There's no question you wrote them. Vanessa's lawyer, William Tan, finally arrived. He'd been trying to reach her all morning, and when he realized she'd been brought in for questioning, he'd rushed to the station. My client is exercising her right to remain silent, William said the moment he walked in. This interview is over. But the damage was done. The police had what they needed. 3 days later, Vanessa Lin was formally charged with criminal harassment and rash acts causing grievous hurt resulting in death. Under Singapore's penal code, if convicted, she faced up to 7 years in prison. The media exploded. The story had everything: wealth, adultery, pregnancy, death, and now criminal charges. Tech billionaire's mistress charged in wife's death. Pregnant mistress accused of harassment campaign that killed Dr. Love Triangle turns deadly. Vanessa Lin faces 7 years for stress-induced death. Vanessa's face was plastered across every newspaper and news website in Singapore. Her life was destroyed in a matter of days. She couldn't go outside without being recognized and harassed. Someone threw a drink at her outside the courthouse. Her social media accounts were flooded with death threats. And then, 2 weeks after the charges were filed, Vanessa received a message that made her blood run cold. It was from a DNA testing laboratory. Marcus had filed for a court-ordered paternity test. The results came back 3 days later. The baby Vanessa was carrying wasn't Marcus' child. Vanessa stared at the results, her hands shaking. The probability of paternity, 0%. How was this possible? And then she remembered. A night 6 weeks before, she'd gotten involved with Marcus. A corporate party at the Raffles Hotel. Too much wine. A handsome lawyer from the mergers and acquisitions team. A hotel room she barely remembered. She'd been so sure the baby was Marcus's. The timing had seemed right. She'd done the math a dozen times, but she'd been wrong. The DNA results were leaked to the press the next day, probably by someone at Marcus's legal team who wanted to destroy what was left of Vanessa's credibility. The headlines changed. Twist in Mistress murder case. Baby isn't Chun's. Vanessa Lin's paternity lie exposed. Child belongs to unknown father. False pregnancy claim adds fraud to murder charges. Vanessa's lawyer dropped her case. He couldn't defend someone who'd lied about everything, including the central leverage of her entire scheme. The prosecution added fraud charges to the existing criminal harassment charges. They argued that Vanessa had knowingly misrepresented paternity to extract money and marriage from Marcus Chen. The case went to trial 4 months later. It lasted 6 days. The evidence was overwhelming. The emails, the testimony from Marcus, the testimony from hospital staff who'd witnessed her laughing, the anonymous letters traced back to her computer, the phone call records. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Martha Coe, looked at Vanessa with open contempt during sentencing. Ms. Lin, Justice Coe said, "You orchestrated a deliberate, calculated campaign of psychological torture against a pregnant woman with a life-threatening medical condition. Your actions directly contributed to her death and the premature birth of her twins, who spent weeks fighting for their lives. You did this not out of passion or love, but out of cold, mercenary greed. You saw a wealthy man as a target and his wife as an obstacle to be removed. And then, when that obstacle was removed through death, you laughed. I sentence you to 7 years imprisonment for criminal harassment and 3 years for fraud to run consecutively. Total sentence, 10 years. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Vanessa was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, her pregnant belly prominent. Photographers shouting questions she didn't answer. She'd gambled everything on a scheme to marry rich and live easy. Instead, she'd gotten a decade in prison. A baby whose father she didn't even remember, and a reputation so destroyed she'd never recover from it. 6 weeks after Lily's death, Oliver and Olivia Chen came home. They were still. Tinny Oliver was now 5 pounds, 8 ounces. And Olivia was 5 pounds even, but they were healthy, thriving, and ready to leave the NICU. Marcus stood in the nursery. He and Lily had prepared the soft yellow walls. The two cribs placed side by side, the mobile with little stars that Lily had picked out months ago. He held Oliver in his left arm and Olivia in his right. These two impossibly small, perfect miracles. They looked like Lily, her delicate features, her serious expression even in sleep. "I'm so sorry," Marcus whispered to them, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry I wasn't better. I'm so sorry I failed your mother. But I promise you, I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life making this right." Over the next year, Marcus Chen underwent a transformation. He stepped down as CEO of Chunkor Systems, appointing a capable Ku to run the day-to-day operations. He couldn't be the father his children needed while running a billion-dollar company. He hired a team of caregivers, but he was hands-on in every way: midnight feedings, diaper changes, doctor's appointments. He learned to function on 4 hours of sleep. He also established the Dr. Lily Chen Foundation for Maternal Health. He donated $50 million to fund research into preeclampsia and eclampsia, to provide free prenatal care for underserved communities, and to train medical staff in recognizing the warning signs of pregnancy complications. The foundation saved lives, hundreds of them in its first 3 years. Marcus also did something else, something painful but necessary. He went to therapy. Real, intensive therapy, to understand how he'd become the man who'd betrayed his wife, who'd allowed a predator like Vanessa into their lives, who'd been so weak and selfish that he'd contributed to Lily's death. It was brutal, it was humbling, but it was necessary. His therapist, Dr. Regina So, didn't let him off easy. "You can't bring Lily back," she told him during one particularly difficult session. "You can't undo what you did, but you can choose to be better. You can choose to raise your children with the values Lily embodied: integrity, compassion, selflessness. You can make sure that Oliver and Olivia grow up knowing their mother was a hero who died bringing them into this world. And you can make sure they never repeat your mistakes." Marcus took those words to heart. As Oliver and Olivia grew from infants into toddlers, Marcus told them stories about their mother, how she'd saved lives in the operating room, how she'd fought for 8 years to bring them into the world, how she'd loved them before they were even born. On their 5th birthday, Marcus took the twins to Lily's grave at Bouquet Brown's cemetery. It was a beautiful spot under a rain tree, with a simple marble headstone that read, "Dr. Lily Chen, beloved wife, devoted mother, she gave everything for love." Oliver, a serious little boy who looked heartbreakingly like his mother, placed a bouquet of yellow flowers at the Gravely's favorite. Olivia, more outgoing but equally thoughtful, placed a drawing she'd made: a picture of a woman with angel wings holding 2 babies. "Is Mummy watching us?" Olivia asked, looking up at Marcus with Lily's eyes. Marcus knelt down beside his children, pulling them close. "Always," he said softly. "She's always watching. And she's so proud of you both. You're exactly who she hoped you'd be: kind, smart, and brave." "Do you miss her?" Oliver asked. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes, but he didn't hide them. He'd learned not to hide his emotions from his children. "Every single day," he admitted. "But I also see her in you too. In Olivia's laugh and Oliver's determination. She's still here with us in all the ways that matter." As they walked back to the car, Oliver holding one of Marcus's hands and Olivia the other, Marcus thought about how far he'd come from that terrible night in the hospital. He'd been a coward, a cheat, a man who'd let his selfishness destroy the person he loved most. But he'd been given a second chance through these 2 incredible children, and he'd spent every day since trying to be worthy of that chance. Vanessa Lynn was still in prison, 3 years into her 10-year sentence. Marcus never thought about her anymore. She was a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when ambition becomes cruelty. But there was one more secret Marcus carried, one final piece of the story that only he knew. 2 weeks before Lily's death, she'd written a letter. She'd given it to her best friend, Dr. Amanda Coe, another surgeon at Singapore General, with instructions to give it to Marcus only if something happened to her. Amanda had given Marcus the letter 3 months after Lily's death, once he'd stabilized enough to read it. Dear Marcus, if you're reading this, it means I didn't survive. It means our babies, our miracle babies, came into this world without me. I know about Vanessa. I've known for months. A private investigator named Patricia gave me all the evidence I needed. I saw the photos, read the emails, understood the full scope of your betrayal. I won't lie to you, it broke my heart. After 8 years of fighting for us, for our family, to discover you'd thrown it all away for someone like her, ... It devastated me. But Marcus, I also know something you don't know yet. I know I'm carrying twins. The ultrasound tech told me 2 days ago, and I asked her not to put it in my file yet. I wanted to surprise you after they were born. If I'm gone, you're now the father of 2 babies. 2 perfect, innocent babies who had nothing to do with your mistakes. Here's what I need you to understand. You can't undo what you did to me. You can't fix this marriage. But you can be a better father than you were a husband. Raise them, Marcus. Raise them with integrity. Teach them that actions have consequences. Teach them that love is more than passionate commitment, sacrifice, putting someone else's needs above your own. And please, please, tell them about me. Not the woman you betrayed, but the woman who fought for 8 years to bring them into this world. Tell them I loved them more than my own life. If you do that, if you give them the father they deserve, then maybe something good can come from this tragedy. I forgive you, Marcus. Not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to leave this world carrying hatred. But more importantly, forgive yourself. You're going to need to be whole to raise our children. Asterisk all my love. Lily. Marcus had read that letter 100 times. He'd memorized every word, and every day he tried to be the man Lily's letter asked him to be. Because in the end, that was what love truly meant, not the passion of an affair or the thrill of something forbidden, but the quiet, daily choice to be better for the people who depended on you. Marcus Chen had failed once, catastrophically, but he wouldn't fail again. 10 years later, Marcus Chen stood in the back of a packed auditorium at National University of Singapore Medical School. His twins, Oliver and Olivia, now 15 years old, sat in the front row. The speaker at the podium was announcing the recipients of the annual Dr. Lily Chen Memorial Scholarship, full-ride scholarship for medical students, specializing in obstetrics and maternal-fetal medicine. This year's recipient was a young woman named Sarah Lim, who lost her own mother to eclampsia and had dedicated her life to preventing other families from experiencing that loss. As Sarah gave her acceptance speech, talking about how Dr. Chen's foundation had inspired her to pursue medicine, Marcus felt tears stream down his face. Oliver reached over and squeezed his father's hand. Olivia leaned against his shoulder. They understood. They'd grown up hearing stories about their mother's sacrifice, seeing the lives her foundation saved, understanding the weight of legacy and responsibility, and they'd also grown up seeing their father's redemption, his daily choice to be better, to give more, to use his second chance for good. Dad, Olivia whispered as the applause filled the auditorium, Mum would be proud of you. Marcus looked down at his daughter, so like Lily, with her mother's compassion and strength, and smiled through his tears. I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so, because that was the real lesson of this story. Not that betrayal brings instant karma, or that affairs always end in tragedy. The lesson was simpler and more profound. Every choice we make sends ripples into the future. We can choose selfishness or sacrifice. We can choose the easy lie or the hard truth. We can choose to be the villain of our own story or the hero. Marcus had made terrible choices. Choices that cost him his wife and nearly cost him his children. But he'd also made the choice to change, to be better, to turn his tragedy into purpose. And in the end, that choice, the choice to grow from our failures rather than be defined by them, is the only choice that truly matters. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more powerful, true life stories every week. Tell me in the comments, can redemption truly erase the past? Or do we carry our mistakes forever? See you in the next story.